There were shots fired over on the Becky, behind Riverside, behind the gas station. I'm on my bike.
How many?
Huh?
How many?
I don't know, three of them. Becky and Riverside. The street behind the pantry. Police highway, somebody might be hurt. I was just passing by going to the gas station.
Okay, did you
and
happen
some
to...
guy told me, no, some guy told me to turn around and go, hurry up, told me go. And he told me get away, let's get away from over there. Yeah, I heard pow, pow, pow.
The call came out that shots had been fired. I was a new boot. I was definitely a rookie, and for a rookie, you're kind of walking into the unknown. My body camera was already rolling.
You know their intel, right? Smaller, and then spoke to two subjects at the gas station, pumped gas. They also, there was kind of shot south of the gas station.
My adrenaline was definitely rushing. I was driving that night. We call him a field training officer. He was sitting on the passenger side and basically was like, all right, it's your show. Let's go. We turned down the residential street and we get out of the car. It was dead silent. I could hear the car that was revving. It was pretty eerie.
Turn the car off?
Yeah.
The car was still on. I could see a black male sitting in the driver's seat, and I could see him convulsing. And every time the male was convulsing, the engine would rev.
Have AMR step it up.
Climbed in the passenger side seat. He looked anywhere from 17 to 24, maybe. I mean, he was young.
Looks like he's been shot in the head.
Yeah.
I could see that he had a bullet hole to his head. There was brain fragmentation coming out, blood coming out. And at that time, I was basically face to face with him and kind of saw his last breath. And I kind of stepped back from there and just kind of was like, oh shit. A field training officer, I tried to feel for a pulse and there wasn't one. This was clearly a murder.
Andy, hey, it's Hoover. I don't know if you're the guy in charge since everybody's out of town and Brad's on the funeral leave, but we had a murder. 1/3, just wanted to pass on. Yeah, we just got the call. The guy's dead in the car. He got shot. We're still actively working it. Black male in the car and Kentucky plates down on Prissy and Becky.
We're 10, 12, 15 minutes from Kentucky. It wasn't odd that a Kentucky car was parked here. We run a plate in our car. We were able to pull up his driver's license, and on his driver's license, it had his face. So identified the driver of the vehicle as a 25-year-old Delvin Mitchell.
Dalvin was my best friend. Technically, his name is Delvin, but he didn't really like it that much, so he would tell us to call him Dalvin. People loved him. As soon as you walk in the room, like you're just gonna get that joy, that like it's like this wind that comes over you.
Dalvin did a lot of music. He never was really a rapper, but he was doing like the production of it. He used to hang out at the house with my son, Blake. My house used to be like a place where all the boys would come to chill out. So one day Blake had come and sat down in my room and asked me if Dalvin could stay with us, because he didn't have nowhere to live. First I was kind of hesitant because I always had people there. And then I told her, yeah, go ahead, we can. And then from there, me and Dalvin, got us a relationship as mom and son, and he used to call me mom.
Oh, he ended up becoming like my actual brother. He went from a friend to a best friend, close friend to a brother. That's a whole different relationship dynamic, okay?
That night he got killed. And I was asleep. They woke me up. Blake called me. and told me that Dalvin was dead. I think I just shut down altogether. I just got numb.
I got a text message. It was like, there's like a Facebook status talking about there was gunshots last night. Y'all be careful, y'all. So like, I don't know, my heart's like beating real fast. And I like my whole, I like fell to my knees because I had a feeling that it was him. And then by the time I got to the crib, they told me it was Dalvin. I don't really remember too much of the conversation because I was like, all I seen was red. Like who would hurt my brother? Like, I don't know, I lost it. For a long period of time, for real, I was, you know what I mean? I was lost.
Just close out that noise complaint as extra patrol. We're gonna be here a while.
On scene, it was, you know, kind of that tunnel vision to what we had in the car. We crime scene off the entire area. That's when the brigade of detectives, detective sergeants, the crime scene guys started to pile in.
When I arrived on scene and kind of processed that scene myself, just looking at things, seeing where, you know, there's a round laying there on the street. There's one in the floorboard. The victim, Delvin's been shot in the head. You're kind of wondering, is this a setup? We don't know. There's all different kinds of scenarios as a detective that you run through your head to try to get it figured out as soon as you possibly can.
The driver's side window also had what was consistent to be a projectile round through that. The door was open, so it could lead to a couple different things, but it looked like who shot him was in the vehicle or in close proximity to the vehicle when the shots were fired.
The violence behind it was intentional. And you could tell that just from the amount of rounds that were sent through the car. It wasn't just to scare him, it was to kill him.
There's 2 shell casings that we've seen, one in the car and one right outside the passenger side.
This side.
Yeah.
Because went through to the other side. There's a shell case.
Because the out looks that way.
Yeah.
Do
your boys start a crime scene log?
Okay.
We don't have all the pieces to the puzzle yet. It was one of those eye-opening experiences of, hey, you know, we've got somebody we know that shot, but where's the shooter? As you're standing there, you see this, you're asking yourself why, and you know it's just a mystery.
Silver Cadillac, Kentucky, 896, Union Williams.
Black Tahoe on rims.
Southbound on Sweetser from Joyce.
You can't go southbound on Sweetser, right?
Or here in my ear, dispatch had notified us that a car was fleeing the area and other units were trying to get behind it. And as it was fleeing, they could see that the car had false plates on it, possibly involved with the scene. So hearing that in my ear, I'm thinking, hopefully we can get this car stopped, figure out who's in the car, maybe they're involved with what happened here.
Officers are initiating their lights and sirens, trying to get this guy to stop. Won't stop. So now in the back of everybody's mind, they're thinking, maybe he's our suspect. You know, he's definitely not going to stop.
It's just a straight adrenaline dump, and it's just a rush. Like, we have to get this car stopped at all costs. And knowing that there's a possible gunman in this car, the level of threat just goes through the roof. There was a vehicle pursuit. We were trying to get the vehicle stopped, and it wasn't stopping. So we thought possibly could be involved because it's in the area, it's fleeing the area. It could be a piece of the puzzle.
His sergeant or lieutenant at the time radioed and said other counties and state police are starting to pick up on this pursuit, so now they're pursuing the guy. But they ended up stopping him and placed him in handcuffs.
Horses around. He had an Indiana ID card. I don't know much more than that.
You got Jack Will's phone number? Maybe. We're gonna want to take this guy back to Vandenberg. So,
Are we gonna tell her, or are they?
We're thinking this might be our guy. He had the false plates on his vehicle, and they look suspicious.
I was planning. I mean, we got felony charges in our county, so we don't. There's no extradition there that we should be able to bring him back to Vandenberg, and you guys can try to talk to him. Just him leaving the area for that is awful coincidental, and talk with Peter and the prosecutor. I mean, if they just want us to impound this and tow it back to Tri-State to Evansville, we'll get a search warrant for it. Okay, thanks.
They identified the guy as a subject named Simone. And Simone was placed in one of our patrol vehicles, and that patrol officer brought him to headquarters for an interview. Hey, what's going on, man? I'm Detective Lowe. This is my Sergeant Detective Hunt.
What's up, man?
How you doing?
Not too good.
I need to ask you some questions, okay? So I'm going to read you Miranda. Probably heard that before, right? I still have to read it to you, all right? You can tell a lot when interviewing subjects by their disposition, how they act, how they talk. Are they looking you in the eye? Are they looking away? Simone had some of those, but you're thinking, well, this guy was right there, and this guy fled the scene from there. All right. Do you know why you're in here right now? Run me down what happened tonight.
I don't even know, man. All I know is the police jumped behind me, and I was just thinking about getting to my mama, man. Cause you know what I'm saying, I'm on probation and stuff, and then like the PO, you know what I'm saying, he said he was gonna, I got a warrant or whatever, so I don't know, man, I'm stupid.
Simone basically told me that he had warrants, he was scared, he didn't want to go to jail. You think, well, maybe they did flee because they have warrants. Maybe they have something else going on. Well, can you at least run me down? I'm trying to figure out something that happened tonight, and I'm trying to take you out of the equation, but I need you to tell me, like I asked you a while ago, the last couple hours before cops got behind you and you took off, what all did you do?
The liquor locker right there on cover. But I ain't been nowhere else. I ain't even do nothing wrong, man. I thought I had a warrant.
After we talked to him, we got a signed search warrant for his vehicle. We couldn't find anything that would tie him to it. So we released him from that crime. It is a little frustrating because you're thinking, well, this guy was right there and doesn't have anything to do with this murder. Now you're back to square one.
You got to take a broad picture and just, you don't want to get hooked on one thing. And this is the way this happened. You know, that's a good thing of a good investigation is you look, broadly and see who all could be involved in this and what all possibly happened here.
The suspect that's still out there didn't like this guy. I mean, who killed Delvin? Still don't know. Don't have anybody else to look at right now. So when you're going through these investigations, you want to know the victim's life. You want to build the victim, his own profile. The more information you gather, you're starting to build some sort of a lead to try to help solve this case.
One thing we're going to do is look at his background. There's a couple different ways we can do it: Facebook and interviewing witnesses and talking to people.
So as we're investigating this murder, we start looking at Delvin's history. We don't have much to go off of. He has a report taken under his name for something criminal, which wasn't like something huge. There wasn't anything of interest that we would need or think that we would need to follow up with. A short time later, another detective in the office had answered a phone call, and it was a male subject. It was named Justin Brewer, saying he'd like to talk to Detective Lowe.
Pretty much almost every homicide, we do always kind of get some type of tip or, hey, you might want to know this information. That's kind of typical of every case you have.
My name is Justin Brewer. She said I could talk to you.
Yes.
Hi, how are you doing today, sir?
Not doing too bad. Just in here trying to figure out an investigation I've got going on, trying to figure out what happened.
Yes, sir. That's the reason why I called. I wanted to present myself to you properly and help as much as possible. But I did want to talk to you, sir.
Okay.
First, I wanted to tell you that Delvin, that's who you're talking about, right? Because that's the only one that I'm. First of all, he wasn't a bad guy. He wasn't an angel. Don't get it wrong, but he wasn't a bad guy, also.
He said that Delvin was a good guy. He's a great guy. He's known Delvin and Delvin's family pretty much his entire life.
I don't want to tell you what I think because I've heard so many different stories. I've heard so many different allegations coming from so many different situations. Okay, for example, he was having sex with a guy's wife that lived across the street from me and my wife.
And he also mentioned a subject named Sean, and he has either a wife or a girlfriend that was named Chastity, and supposedly Delvin was messing around with this Chastity lady, and maybe we should turn our direction towards that. Maybe Sean's mad at Delvin and decided that he's had enough and he's going to take care of it.
Okay. All right. Well, you have my number, Justin.
When Mr. Brewer talked about Sean being involved, so that's something you have to take in consideration. Sometimes you have retaliation killings. We were very concerned of the situation. When the gentleman that's having an affair with your significant other does end up murdered, you're always suspicious when anything like that happens. Maybe that could be one potential motive for Mr. Mitchell's demise. We need to interview him to help us find out where is this going to lead us. Mr. Brewer did contact the police department on a recorded phone call. He brought up the information that Mr. Mitchell was having a relationship with Chastity and that her husband, Sean, was not happy about that.
Sean's one that I raised also. Everybody thought Sean done it. And everybody was calling me talking about, Sean, we're gonna kill Sean.
Me knowing Sean, growing up with Sean, I knew that he wouldn't do nothing like that. But no put nothing past nobody though. We don't know. We just know that he's a person in interest.
Obviously, they're going to look at Sean's criminal history, and he did have a little criminal history with disorderly conduct and lying to law enforcement.
Sean said, Mom, I didn't do it. So I believe Sean. So I went with Sean to the interrogation place.
I want to read you Miranda just because your name's being brought up as a suspect.
Yes, sir, I understand that.
I had talked to Sean about the murder and that he's a possible suspect, that his ex-wife, Chastity, had been seeing Delvin. Well, you guys were divorced though, right?
Yes, sir, yeah, so it was none of my business.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But then I get...
But still.
Yes, sir.
Because you and Delvin were friends.
Well, as far as I knew we was, and then I didn't get all the traumatic and sad information until after that. He didn't even really like you, and obviously, by the actions of what was going on, that I wasn't anything to him.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I didn't know all these hurtful things until after that.
That night he got killed, I had to tell Sean that Delvin was with Chastity. He didn't know. So he got mad and sad all at the same time.
He said he was a little upset about that, but it wasn't something that he would go and take revenge out on somebody for. Why do you think your name was brought up about this, though?
I think my name was brought up because everybody needs a fallback and a scapegoat, and that's who I am. Not that I'm blaming on anyone, but I even immediately, when I heard it, was like, oh my goodness, what should I do? What do I need to do? Is there someone I need to speak with? Like, because I mean, look, you know what I mean? Like how it looks, you know what I'm saying? Like your buddy's messing with your wife, blah, 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 whatever.
Yeah, it looked real bad.
It looked real bad.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I mean, it did for a little, you know.
Yeah,
so.
It really did.
yes, sir. And you know, I mean, we've all watched, you see enough, you know, shows to know that.
Sean said he went to sleep that night that incident occurred, and he didn't know anything about it till the next morning when he woke up.
You have a past conviction of lying to the police. Why are we going to believe you? You're going to have to show us, why you're not involved in this.
Would you mind us looking at your phone?
I don't know.
Okay.
Whatever you need to do.
Can I take it? I'm gonna take it in there and look at it. Is that all right?
Yeah, that doesn't matter.
He said I have an app that tracks my sleeping pattern, and it'll show you on my phone that at that particular time and day that I was sleeping. So we looked at his phone, looked at that app. He was just being very honest and truthful, which in our minds kind of eliminated him from this murder. Investigating something like this is hard sometimes because it's a little overwhelming, but we keep working our case.
Delvin, he was my biggest fan, my biggest supporter. He was always pushing me to do great. I remember preparing for the funeral.
His birth mother did not want to show up. She did not. His sisters welcomed me in, because they know that I took care of him. Then everybody got together and wanted a picture taken of all the guys together.
That whole time, I changed to a whole different person. I don't even remember who I was at that moment. And we were still trying to find the killer for Dalvin. So it's just a lot going on at this moment, you know what I'm saying? I can't grieve at all right now. Right now, it's just my soul's gone. I don't even want to live no more myself, you know what I mean? So it really hurt, for real. And I'm still suffering.
His life was taken. He didn't deserve that. There's a lot of people out here that deserve it, but he didn't.
A short time later, phone rings, and again, it's Justin Brewer, same guy from the earlier communication.
He was having sex with a guy's wife that lived across the street from me and my wife.
I did find that kind of odd that another call came in, so I answered the phone. He tries to tell me several different stories about what could possibly happen to Delvin, which in my mind thought was kind of far-fetched. I said, did you ever meet up with Delvin? He said he was supposed to meet Delvin on the night that he was murdered. And at that particular time, I don't know that information. He didn't want to give a whole lot of information before. So you're kind of wondering why now.
That night I called him, and he was supposed to meet up with me. My wife is a cab driver. I called my wife to bring me, and he never showed up. And I didn't charge him, to my heart about that because it was something so small and petty. Honestly, I just felt like, well, maybe he thought it wasn't worth his time.
So I asked him where they're going to meet at. It's a little apartment complex, a block and a half away from where Delvin got shot and killed, where he could get a bag of weed for his wife. His wife's name was Amber Brewer. She worked for a cab company, driving a cab, and he said, no, I met in that area and I waited all night long. He never showed. There was other detectives in the room with me. We kind of all just looked at each other in awe. We just could admit to being there that night, close to the area where Delvin was murdered. In my opinion, you're being nosy because you know something happened and you're wanting to know what we know. And I'm not giving that to you.
You heard the stuff on Facebook, like the police chase and the shooting and all that? You tried to call him or text him, or what'd you do?
No, sir. No, sir. After I left, I tried to call him again, and he didn't answer.
After we completed our conversation, like I said, did this guy really just call in here and give this story of his events that in his mind took place? It didn't make any sense. None of his stories made any sense.
I believe then Justin called back one or two more times, just trying to kind of feel the detective out, hey, what do you have on me? And then trying to throw shade on maybe to send an investigation to another area other than himself.
He kind of admitted that he was supposed to meet Delvin very close to where the incident occurred, the night that he was murdered. So we had enough probable cause to get a warrant for his phone number, to get call detail records, text messages, and found out that on the night of the incident, Justin had called a female. Her name's Scarlett.
There were several phone calls and texts back and forth. So we all were thinking, is she the side chick that got involved? When you commit a crime such as murder, the wheels are turning. I'm sure he's looking out the window. Did anybody see us? He called on somebody that he's had faith in, and maybe that was Scarlett. We got to talk to that person, find out how she was involved. We did some further follow-ups and found additional cell phone data. Cell phone data does not lie. The phone data showed that Scarlett was in recent contact with Justin the night of the murder. There were several phone calls and texts back and forth that was suspicious. We found out that Scarlett was living with her mother. So we went to the mother's house to try to interview her there, but she wasn't home. So we interviewed the mother at her house.
Okay, Terry, go ahead and have a seat. Terry, you remember me. I'm Detective Whitler.
Yes.
And this is Detective Hands.
She's a very nice lady, and I believe she had some concerns about her daughter's safety since she was involved with Justin Brewer.
She said, Mama, Justin wants to know if he can come to the house and stay for about 3 or 4 days. And I said, well, for what? He's got a home. Because when he came that night, I was so freaked out. I knew something wasn't right. And I stayed in there to myself. I didn't want to be around him, nothing.
She said Justin ended up getting dropped off at Scarlett's mother's house the night of the murder, and Justin had come in kind of in a frantic type mood, very wired, very amped up.
Really, truly, and honestly, didn't even want him there. But Scarlett.
Yeah. It's your daughter. I understand.
I know.
This is unsettling, but what I want to make sure is you're not doing something to your kid now.
No.
If you know something, it's important.
The only time that he talked to me, he come downstairs, Scarlett was gone, and he just kept walking back and forth, doing this. I really want to tell you what's going on, Mom. I think you should know, but I really don't want to tell you. More or less, he was admitting to me, but he didn't come out and say it.
According to Scarlett's mother, he said something bad had happened that night.
We were starting to get more and more information. She did admit that Justin was at the house, that she's a potential not eyewitness to the murder, but maybe a circumstantial witness to a murder. Do you ever get 100% of the information? The only person that really knows that is the person you're interviewing.
Did he expand on that? What he wanted you to know?
No. Not at all. He did not come out and say he murdered that boy. No, he did not. And I put my name on the Bible to that. He did not say that.
Okay.
But in so many words, I knew that something wasn't right and he'd done something.
I mean, you could tell she was scared of him.
She would sit there and talk to us and smoke, which I'm not a smoking fan, but it was worth it.
What did Scarlett tell you that he told her?
Scarlett told me that he killed me.
And when was this?
This was...
Before he left?
Yeah, before he left.
Justin didn't tell you personally that he did
No, he did not. I never heard that come out of his mouth. In a roundabout way, though. He said it, in a roundabout way.
Afterwards, we did some interviews with Scarlett. She was not willing to give up any information. We tried to speak with Justin, but he refused to talk to law enforcement when confronted.
Justin didn't want to speak with us, so we put our attention more towards Amber, Justin's wife.
In the interview phone calls before with Justin Brewer, he did inform detectives that he had been picked up that night in Amber's cab to meet Mr. Mitchell, and Mr. Mitchell had never shown up. We then go to UCABI. They did confirm that yes, Amber was working that night, and her cab that had GPS tracker in it, which is always good for us. And it shows exactly where the cab was going. It could be that break moment where like, oh, this is it.
There is almost always information on those devices that will help us along in our case. So you're hoping that happens.
I went into the office and they had come back from the taxi cab place with the GPS information. And it showed Amber's cab going down to the southeast side and stopping a block or so from the murder. So it was kind of nice to look at the data and go, okay, so it puts him at the scene of the crime at the time of the murder. And then immediately after, it shows her stopping on top of Diamond Avenue over Pigeon Creek. That was the first thing we all thought, holy she just threw that gun out in the creek.
The dive team showed up at the bridge and they did their process as far as searching for the gun. Are we gonna find something there? My thoughts are, there's no way.
There's a young man from the local news, and my first question to that reporter is, hey, when is this gonna be on TV? And he said it'll be on at 11 o'clock news.
Evansville's not a huge community, but you look up and there's news media trucks lined across this bridge. They were all over the story.
We then got the thumbs up that there was a discovery, and the diver did a great job. He found it in pitch dark water and he pulled that thing up, and I'll never forget it. And the next thing you know, you're looking at a slide from a Smith & Wesson. So this is more icing on the cake.
We had enough probable cause to get arrest warrants for Justin and Amber.
But we could not locate them here in the city of Evansville. It might have taken us a week or two, and we got I was on a date night with my wife and got a confirmation from the FBI that Amber and Justin were in custody in Chumley, Georgia, just outside Atlanta. She was stopped while texting and driving. So at that point, things were going good with them in custody. You'd love to sit down face to face with them, look them eye to eye, and get a full confession. Justin Brewer refused to speak to investigators, but Amber decided to speak with law enforcement.
Come on now. Yeah. Mr. Braxton will get going now. Oh, thank you.
Myself and Detective Lowe walked in there thinking, okay, what are we going to hear?
The best way I think to kind of start this back is just going to go back a little bit from the date before everything happened.
Are we going to hear some story that does not jive with any of the evidence we have?
And I'll take you back to around January 25th of 2019.
Or is she going to tell us the truth?
We're being recorded, you understand that, right? We're open, giving the statement.
Amber Brewer did decide to speak with law enforcement.
fully intend not to tell a lie at all.
So if it's safe to say on 1/25 of 2019, the January 25th of 19, you were working at UCABI.
Mm-hmm.
Sometime or another, did you have a conversation with Justin, and did you go pick him up at the hotel you were staying at?
Yes.
Okay.
I went and picked him up so I could get a bag of weed.
Okay.
Amber basically told us that the night of the murder, Justin was wanting to get a little bag of weed.
Who set up the deal to get the bag of weed?
He did.
Okay. And when we're talking about, and who did he set it up with?
That young man right there, his name was on that paper,
Okay. Devin Mitchell.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
She said she picked Justin up. They drove to the southeast side of Evansville to meet Delvin that night.
We just enter into the parking lot.
Okay, and what happens there?
We get in the car that he was driving.
Delvin's car?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and what happens in there?
He takes off out the parking lot, and I'm not going to tell you which direction we went in, because at the point we get in the car, I'll leave it up to them to figure out whatever they're doing, because I'm with my husband.
I understand.
She gets in the back passenger seat of Delvin's car, and Justin gets in the front seat. They drive around a little while.
So I'm in the back seat, minding my own business. As soon as he pulls over, my husband pulls out a gun, and I'm not used to those type of things.
I understand
I'm
that.
trying to yell. So I got out the car and took off running.
Okay.
And that's when I heard the gun go off.
You can remember how many times you heard it go off?
No.
Justin's got a gun pointing at Delvin. And she says she jumps out of the car and takes off running. And she gets a short distance and hears some gunshots.
People give false confessions. We did not find anything deceitful in her interview with us. Everything was consistent with our investigation.
Okay, at some point do you stop your cab at the Pigeon Creek Bridge there?
Yes.
Okay, and do you get out?
Yes.
And what do you do there?
Well, my vehicle was smoking. I did make a maintenance report about it, and I don't know. It was smoking. So, but I threw the slide that he told me I had to get rid of.
So after she tells us this story, you're pretty confident you've had the right guy. You've been hearing his name. He's made calls to you. It all matches up.
Mr. Mitchell was a very young man, and to be killed over a bag of marijuana, it is tragic. He's not going to get his life back, and the family doesn't have him back. I don't know if it's a lack of respect for a human person, or it's just the disdain for not getting something you think you deserve. I don't know what causes this.
Amber testifies against her husband. She was charged with obstruction. She was released on time served. Justin was ultimately charged with murder. They found him guilty. He was sentenced, and the judge recommended 85 years in prison.
Scarlett was ultimately convicted of obstruction of justice for lying to law enforcement, and she was sentenced to 2 years and 182 days. We've done phone calls before where people have actually called in and talked to law enforcement knowing they're the suspect. They want to know what the word on the street is, but curiosity kills the cat sometimes, and that's what happened in this case.
In my mind and my heart, I hope the family knows that we did everything we could and that we did get justice for Delvin.
Delvin, he was a star. I mean, he was just great. He didn't really get a chance to even live life. I'm still having trouble with it. I sit at home all the time. I really don't deal with anybody. I don't deal with anybody.
I hope Justin really thinks about what he done and how bad he impacted a lot of people. Dalvin was the joy of a lot of our lives. And now we don't have that joy no more. You stole that joy from us. He took my bestest friend. So I'm hurt still to this day. It was the life of the party. There ain't no more parties no more.
It starts with a detail so small it almost disappears in the retelling. A porch light still on at dawn. In a town where people pride themselves on locking doors and turning off lights, that glow feels wrong. Not alarming. Not yet. Just wrong enough to linger in the back of the mind. By the time anyone understands its meaning, it is already too late. A woman is missing. No note. No straggle. No goodbye. And in a small-town Texas morning, silence becomes the loudest sound anyone has ever heard. The street looks ordinary. Neatly cut lawns. Pickup trucks parked at familiar angles. Wind chimes clicking softly in the early heat. This is not where people vanish. This is where lives repeat themselves day after day with comforting predictability. She is supposed to be part of that rhythm. Wake up. Coffee. Work. Phone calls to family. But the phone rings and rings. Her car sits untouched in the driveway. Her purse is inside. Her shoes by the door. It's as if she stepped out for a moment and never stepped back in. When police arrive, they move carefully, quietly, as if sound itself might contaminate what little remains. The house offers no drama. No overturned furniture. No broken glass. The bed is made. The kitchen smells faintly of yesterday's dinner. This is not a crime scene that explains itself. This is a question wrapped in normalcy, and that unsettles even the most seasoned officers. Disappearances without violence are the hardest to read. They suggest consent, familiarity, a door open willingly. Word spreads fast, faster than the official statements can keep up. By mid-morning, neighbors are standing in clusters, voices low, eyes alert. Everyone starts replaying the last time they saw her. A wave. A conversation. A laugh exchanged with someone who felt safe enough not to mention twice. In a town like this, trust is assumed, not earned. That assumption hangs in the air now. Heavy and unexamined. Search efforts begin before anyone uses the phrase cold case. Volunteers arrive in trucks and SUVs, forming lines that stretch across fields and along ditches. Dogs track scents that lead nowhere. Helicopters churn the sky, their shadows sweeping over land that seems to hold its breath. Each hour that passes tightens something in the collective chest of the community. Missing is no longer a temporary condition. It is becoming permanent. Local media arrives, their cameras catching the edges of grief and confusion. Reporters choose careful words at first. Unexplained disappearance. Family asking for help. But the longer the search goes on, the sharper the language becomes. Questions about foul play surface. Speculation creeps in, unwelcome but inevitable. And somewhere between the evening news and the whispered conversations in grocery store aisles, the phrase cold case begins to form, still unofficial, but already feared. Investigators work methodically, assembling a timeline from fragments. The last confirmed sighting. The final phone call. The narrow window where everything went wrong. They interview coworkers, friends, family members, neighbors. Everyone wants to help. Everyone offers details. And yet, the story refuses to focus. Leads dissolve under scrutiny. Alibis check out. Nothing points clearly in one direction. Rumors rush in to fill the silence left by facts. Some suggest she ran away. Others hint at secret relationships, hidden struggles. Each theory reflects more about the people who believe it than about the woman herself. In the absence of evidence, imagination takes over, and imagination is rarely kind. Days stretch into weeks. The search area expands, then contracts. Posters bloom on telephone poles, then fade under the Texas sun. The town tries to resume its routines, but something fundamental has shifted. Parents keep children closer. Doors lock earlier. Conversations lower when unfamiliar footsteps approach. The disappearance has rewritten the unspoken rules of safety. Inside the police department, the case file grows thicker. Evidence collected early is carefully packaged and stored. Fibers, clothing, notes taken from interviews that feel important but lead nowhere. Detectives revisit the same questions, hoping repetition will produce clarity. Doesn't. Without a body, without a crime scene, the investigation stalls. Resources shift elsewhere. New cases demand attention. The missing woman becomes an open file, then a quiet one. Years pass. The town changes, but the story remains. New families hear it secondhand. A cautionary tale shared during conversations about why people lock their doors now. The woman's name becomes synonymous with absence. She is no longer just a person who vanished. She is the town's unresolved question. Every so often, the case resurfaces. An anniversary. A tip that goes nowhere. A new detective who reads the file with fresh eyes and the same frustration. Technology advances, but not enough. DNA exists, but databases are limited. Evidence sits patiently, waiting for a future it does not yet know it needs. And always in the background there is familiarity. The faces that were present then are still present now. The people who helped search, who offered condolences, who stood close when hope was thinning. No one thinks twice about them. Why would they? In a small town, closeness is safety, or so everyone believes. The woman's family lives suspended between hope and mourning. Without answers, grief cannot settle. It remains sharp, unresolved, resurfacing without warning. They mark birthdays without her. Holidays pass with an empty chair. Each year that goes by without news feels like an additional loss layered onto the first. The case grows cold not because it is forgotten, but because it resists warmth. It refuses resolution. It sits in evidence lockers and memory alike, waiting. Waiting for science. Waiting for courage. Waiting for someone to look again at what felt too familiar to question. Back at the beginning, no one sees any of this coming. All they know is that a woman is gone, and the town that prided itself on knowing its own now realizes how little it truly understood. The porch light eventually turns off. The house locks up. Life moves forward. But the silence she left behind never does. By the second week, the town has learned how to live with a new sound. Unanswered questions. They sit behind every conversation, hum beneath daily routines, whisper late at night when houses finally go quiet. The search has slowed not because hope is gone, but because exhaustion has set in. Hope, it turns out, is heavy. Carry it long enough and it reshapes the body. Detectives return to the house again and again, walking the same rooms, tracing the same paths from door to door, window to window. They look for what doesn't belong. A fingerprint out of place. A fiber that shouldn't be there. They find very little. The absence is deliberate, almost surgical. Whoever took her knew what to touch and what not to. Or knew her well enough not to leave anything behind at all. The timeline becomes the backbone of the investigation. Officers pin it down as tightly as they can, minute by minute. She spoke to a relative in the early evening. Sounded normal. Calm. No fear in her voice. A neighbor remembers a car slowing near the house later that night. Headlights cutting across the lawn. Another neighbor swears they heard nothing. These fragments don't contradict each other. But they don't align either. They hover, refusing to lock into a single version of events. Police canvass the neighborhood thoroughly. Doors open. Statements are given. Coffee is poured. People want to help. They point out unfamiliar vehicles, strangers passing through. Anything that feels external. Anything that doesn't force them to look inward. The idea that danger might come from inside the circle of trust is too unsettling to entertain openly. Search dogs are brought back in, retracing old ground with new handlers. Their paths still dissolve into nothing. The land offers no answers. Fields stretch wide and indifferent. Creeks run shallow, revealing stones and debris, but no sign of her. It feels as though she evaporated, leaving behind only the shape of her life. Investigators turn their focus to her routines. Work schedules. Favorite stops. People she spoke to regularly. They build a portrait of a woman grounded, connected, not someone planning to disappear. This matters. It pushes back against the quiet theory that she chose to leave. voluntary disappearance begins to look less plausible with every detail uncovered. The media pressure intensifies. Reporters circle the story, hungry for progress. They ask about suspects, about persons of interest, about theories. Police remain cautious. They know the danger of naming names too early, especially in a town where reputations are everything. A wrong word can ruin a life as surely as the crime itself. Behind closed doors, however, detectives debate possibilities more freely. They talk about opportunity, about proximity, about how crimes like this often begin with someone the victim knows. The statistics are clear, even if the town isn't ready to hear them. Still, translating probability into accusation requires more than instinct. It requires proof. And proof is thin. One name surfaces repeatedly, not because of anything incriminating but because of presence. A family friend. Someone who had access. Someone who knew her schedule. Someone who helped search, who stood beside the family when cameras were rolling. His cooperation is complete. His alibi checks out, at least on paper. There is no reason officially to look closer. And so, for now, no one does. Time passes in a strange way. Days feel endless but weeks vanish. The initial shock gives way to a dull, persistent ache. The town stops expecting updates. The woman's face on missing posters becomes familiar. Then background. People still look, still hope, but quietly, privately, as if loud hope might tempt disappointment. Inside the police department, the case begins to strain resources. Other crimes demand attention. Budgets tighten. Supervisors ask difficult questions about allocation. Detectives push back, insisting that this disappearance isn't just another file. It represents something deeper, something that threatens the town's sense of safety. But urgency is hard to sustain without results. Evidence is cataloged meticulously. Hair samples, fibers, soil, items from the house that might hold microscopic traces of contact. Everything is preserved with care, though no one can say when or if it will ever speak. Technology has limits. DNA analysis exists, but databases are small, incomplete. Matches are unlikely. The evidence waits in silence. The family feels the shift before anyone says it out loud. Fewer phone calls, shorter briefings, subtle changes in language. If replaces when. They cling to hope anyway because the alternative is unbearable. Without certainty, grief has no direction. It spins, restless and unresolved. Community gatherings become more subdued. Church services include prayers that feel heavier than before. Conversations trail off when the topic arises, as if speaking her name too often might summon something dark. The town is learning the etiquette of unsolved tragedy, the unspoken rules about how long it is acceptable to ask questions. Months turn into a year. The case officially transitions from active investigation to long-term review. The phrase cold case appears in print for the first time, carefully, almost apologetically. It lands with a chill. Cold suggests distance. Cold suggests neglect. Cold suggests that whatever heat once existed is gone. But the case isn't forgotten. It simmers beneath the surface, fueled by doubt and unresolved fear. Parents warn children with a little more urgency. Strangers are noticed more carefully. Trust, once automatic, now comes with conditions. Inside the department, a detective occasionally pulls the file, flipping through pages as if something might suddenly reveal itself through repetition alone. They circle the same facts, the same names. That familiar presence appears again and again, never quite crossing the threshold into suspicion. Familiarity protects him. It always has. The town ages. People move. Witnesses relocate. Memories soften at the edges. The woman's absence becomes a constant rather than an interruption. It settles into the town's identity, a scar that never fully heals. No one knows yet that the evidence, quietly waiting, will one day speak with clarity. No one knows that technology will catch up, that the past will resurface with force. For now, all that exists is uncertainty, stretched thin across years, and a question that refuses to fade. How does someone vanish from a place where everyone is known? The answer remains hidden, wrapped in trust, buried under time, patient. And the cold case continues, not frozen solid, but suspended, waiting for the moment when the town will finally be forced to look again at what it once chose not to see. The second year arrives without ceremony. slipping in quietly the way bad news often does. There is no announcement, no marker beyond the calendar page turning, and the realization that 12 months have passed without a single concrete answer. The town absorbs this milestone with a collective flinch. A year is long enough for hope to thin, but not long enough to disappear. It lingers, fragile, uneven, demanding energy people no longer know how to give. The investigation settles into a pattern that feels both disciplined and defeated. Detectives re-interview witnesses, not because they expect new revelations, but because time changes perspective. People remember differently after months of replaying events in their minds. Details once dismissed resurface with new emphasis. A tone of voice, a hesitation, a moment that felt insignificant then but feels heavy now. Most of these recollections lead nowhere. Some lead back to the same familiar faces, circling the same names without ever landing. Evidence remains locked away, preserved carefully, almost reverently. Boxes sit in climate-controlled rooms, labeled with dates that already feel historical. The science that could unlock them exists only in theory, discussed at conferences, tested in labs far from this town. For now, the evidence is mute, and silence continues to dictate the pace of the case. The woman's family learns to live in fragments. They mark time by what is missing rather than what is present. Birthdays pass. Holidays arrive and leave. Each event carries a dual weight. Celebration for what remains, mourning for what never will. Friends offer support at first, then gradually retreat, unsure of how long sympathy is supposed to last. The family understands. Tragedy makes people uncomfortable, especially when it refuses to resolve. The town's relationship with the story evolves. Early urgency fades into cautious distance. People still care, but caring loudly feels exhausting. Conversations about the case become shorter, more speculative, less emotional. It is discussed the way storms are discussed long after they pass, with curiosity, with hindsight, without the immediate fear. Children grow up hearing warnings disguised as advice. Don't stay out late. Don't assume you know someone just because you've known them forever. These lessons are absorbed without context, shaping behavior quietly. The disappearance becomes a tool for discipline, a reminder that the world is less safe than it appears, even here. Inside the police department, turnover begins to take its toll. Officers retire. New detectives inherit the file, reading through reports written before they joined the force. They approach it with fresh eyes and the same limitations. Without new evidence, without cooperation from someone who knows more than they are saying, the case resists progress. It becomes an exercise in endurance. Every few months a tip comes in. A caller claims to know something. A letter arrives, anonymous, vague, impossible to verify. Each one reignites a small spark of hope, quickly extinguished by investigation. False alarms become their own form of cruelty, lifting spirits just enough to make the fall harder. Media interest dwindles, then spikes briefly on anniversaries. Articles recap the known facts, using phrases like still unsolved and community haunted. The language becomes familiar, almost formulaic. The woman's face appears on screens unchanged, frozen at the age she disappeared. Time moves on for everyone except her. Rumors persist, evolving with each retelling. Some versions paint her as reckless, others as secretive. These narratives say more about the town's need for explanation than about reality. In the absence of truth, stories fill the void, reshaping her into something easier to categorize. The family hears these rumors and absorbs them quietly, knowing correction rarely sticks. One constant remains: the family friend. He is still present, still helpful, still trusted. He attends gatherings. He checks in. He expresses frustration with the lack of answers. His concern appears genuine, his behavior unremarkable. Familiarity continues to shield him, reinforcing the belief that monsters look different, act different, come from elsewhere. Detectives note his consistency. They also note that consistency alone is not evidence. Without contradiction, without motive that can be proven, he remains just another name in a long list. The case demands certainty, not suspicion, and certainty is in short supply. Years pass unevenly. Some feel endless, others vanish. The town experiences new events, new tragedies, new celebrations. Each one briefly displaces the disappearance, but never fully replaces it. The cold case becomes part of the town's emotional infrastructure, a background hum that never shuts off completely. Technology advances quietly, incrementally. DNA analysis improves. Databases expand. The idea that old evidence might one day yield answers becomes less abstract. Detectives discuss it cautiously, aware that raising expectations too early can do more harm than good. Still, the possibility exists now, faint but real. The evidence boxes remain sealed, but no longer forgotten. They are audited, checked, preserved with renewed care. Chain of custody is reviewed. Logs are updated. These procedural details feel small, but they matter. They are acts of faith in a future resolution. The family senses this shift before it is explained. Conversations with investigators include new language. If technology allows. When funding becomes available, hope stirs again, reluctant but persistent. It is dangerous to hope after so long, but impossible not to. The town reacts cautiously to these whispers. No one wants to believe too strongly. Experience has taught them that belief can be expensive. Still, the idea that the past might not be finished with them begins to take root. As the years continue to layer, something subtle changes. Familiarity begins to crack. People who once felt unquestionably safe are reevaluated, not accused but reconsidered. The disappearance has taught the town a difficult lesson. Closeness is not proof of innocence. Trust, once automatic, now requires reflection. The cold case remains unresolved, but it is no longer dormant. It waits, alert, its pieces preserved, its questions intact. The town does not yet know that the most dangerous part of the story lies ahead, not in the crime itself, but in what will be revealed when the silence finally breaks. For now, the case endures, stretched across time, held together by patience, grief, and the quiet understanding that some truths take decades to surface. And when they do, they rarely arrive gently. Time does not heal this town so much as it rearranges the pain. By the fourth year, the disappearance has become a permanent fixture, no longer shocking, never comfortable. It settles into routines the way dust does, invisible until someone brushes against it. People still remember the exact day, the weather, the moment they heard. But the memory has dulled at the edges, worn down by repetition and survival. Inside the police department, the case file grows thicker even as progress remains thin. New pages are added not because answers have been found, but because procedures demand motion. Follow-ups. Status reviews. Internal memos acknowledging that the case remains active. Active becomes a technical term, rather than a reflection of momentum. The investigation exists in a strange limbo. Alive on paper, stagnant in reality. The lead detective changes. It always does eventually. The original investigator transfers to another city, carrying fragments of the case with him, fragments that will never fully translate to someone else. His replacement studies the file late into the night, reading transcripts, examining photographs, trying to reconstruct emotions from ink and pixels. He knows the danger of second-hand understanding. You can read what people said, but not how their voices sounded when they said it. He walks the crime scene again years after the fact. The location looks smaller now, tamed by familiarity. New paint, new fences. Life has reclaimed the space with indifference. He imagines it as it was, tries to overlay past tension onto present calm. It is an imperfect exercise but necessary. Investigations are built on empathy as much as evidence. The family grows quieter. Their grief becomes private, efficient. They stop explaining themselves to others. They no longer correct every misconception. Some battles are too draining to fight indefinitely. They focus inward on remembering her as she was rather than defending her against rumor. The world can believe what it wants. Their truth remains unchanged. Anniversaries still hurt, but differently. The pain is no longer sharp. It is heavy, pressing down rather than cutting through. Each year without answers feels less like a surprise and more like confirmation of a cruel pattern. Closure becomes a concept they stop using. Promises too much. The town's younger generation knows the case only as a story. A warning passed down, stripped of immediacy. They know her name, her face from faded flyers still taped inside the police station, but not her laugh, not her voice. To them, she is an idea rather than a person. This distance feels like another kind of loss. Rumors resurface occasionally, reshaped by time. Someone claims they heard something years ago, but didn't realize it mattered. Someone else remembers seeing a car that night, a detail they are sure was overlooked. Each new claim is treated carefully, weighed against the long history of disappointment. Investigators listen without visible expectation. The family friend remains a constant presence, his role unchanged. He attends memorials. He speaks kindly. He expresses frustration with the system, with the lack of answers. His consistency becomes almost reassuring. People point to him as proof that not everyone disappears when things get hard. Trust hardens around him, reinforced by years of familiarity. But the new detective notices something subtle. Not a contradiction, not a lie. A pattern. The family friend's statements over the years are remarkably stable, almost too precise. Memory usually degrades, shifts, adapts. His does not. The detective flags it mentally, knowing that intuition without evidence is dangerous territory. Still, patterns matter. Technology continues to evolve quietly, almost invisibly. Databases expand. Cross-referencing becomes faster, more comprehensive. Old evidence is no longer obsolete by default. The detective requests a review of preserved materials, not because he expects a miracle, but because the rules have changed since the last time anyone looked closely. Boxes are reopened under controlled conditions. Gloves, masks, documentation. Every step recorded. Feels ceremonial, like disturbing something sacred. The evidence is old but intact. Fibers, biological samples. Items that once yielded nothing now carry new potential. Science has caught up to patience. The lab work is slow. Painfully slow. Results come back in increments, each one either closing a door or cracking it slightly. Most are inconclusive. Some raise questions without providing answers. The detective learns to manage his own expectations. Hope is useful only if it does not interfere with judgment. The family is informed cautiously. No premises. No dramatic language. Just the acknowledgement that new methods are being applied. They respond with restrained gratitude. They have learned how dangerous excitement can be. Still, something shifts. A long dormant nerve wakes up. The town senses the change before it is announced. Increased police activity. Quiet visits. Subtle inquiries. People notice when law enforcement starts asking questions again, even if they don't say why. The cold case stirs, unsettling a community that had learned to live with unanswered questions. Conversations grow cautious. Old assumptions are revisited. People replay memories they thought were settled. Trust, once fixed, becomes fluid. The idea that the truth might involve someone familiar begins to feel less abstract, more plausible. It is an uncomfortable thought, resisted instinctively. The detective interviews the family friend again. Years have passed since the last formal conversation. The setting is neutral, controlled. The questions are similar but not identical. They test memory, reaction, consistency. The answers come smoothly, confidently. Too smoothly. Nothing overtly suspicious emerges. No confession. No breakdown. But the detective leaves with the same unease he arrived with. The interview has not cleared the man. It has simply failed to incriminate him. Those are not the same thing. As the fourth year draws to a close, the case stands at a quiet threshold. It is still unsolved, still officially cold. But beneath the surface, something is warming. Evidence is being reinterpreted. Assumptions are loosening. The story is no longer frozen in its original shape. The town does not yet understand what this means. Neither does the family. Even the detective cannot see the full path ahead. All he knows is that the silence surrounding the case feels different now. Less absolute. Less permanent. The disappearance remains unresolved, but the past is beginning to answer back, slowly, reluctantly. And when it does, it will not whisper. It will demand to be heard. The fifth year begins with quiet tension. The kind that doesn't announce itself with sirens or headlines, but sits in the background, heavy and persistent. The town moves through its routines as if nothing has changed, yet everyone senses the underlying shift. Conversations pause when her name is mentioned, neighbors glance at one another with subtle uncertainty, and parents tighten grips on children's hands while walking down familiar streets. The disappearance has become both legend and warning, And now something is beginning to stir that neither the town nor the family can ignore. Inside the police department, the file has grown fat with time and thin with leads. Each investigator who touches it leaves behind marginal notes, new questions scribbled in the margins, tentative hypotheses that never solidify into proof. A new detective has been assigned, one with a reputation for patience and intuition, someone who understands that cold cases are rarely solved with force. They are solved with observation, persistence, and the willingness to notice what everyone else has ignored. He studies old reports late into the night, flipping through faded photographs, reading interview transcripts, listening to the cadences in people's words long after the voices themselves have gone quiet. The crime scene years later feels smaller, tamed by the passage of time. Streets that once seemed wide with possibility now feel narrow. Every fence, every tree, every sidewalk marking the memory of a night that should never have existed. The detective walks those streets as if mapping not only the geography but the invisible lines of trust, opportunity, and silence that defined it. He notices details no one paid attention to before. A hedge trimmed unusually high, footprints that might have been overlooked, a driveway that seems too accessible. Each observation feels infinitesimal, yet in cold cases infinitesimals matter. They accumulate until they form a pattern that the human eye can recognize. Meanwhile, the family continues their private mourning, a ritual of restraint and careful remembrance. Birthdays arrive like landmines, holidays pass with empty chairs, and anniversaries are marked quietly, with soft prayers and muted tears. Friends gradually recede, not out of cruelty but exhaustion. Empathy fades when it has no outlet. The family has learned to grieve without an audience, to carry the weight of absence in a way that demands strength, patience, and a level of courage invisible to outsiders. In the town, stories about the disappearance continue to circulate, reshaped with each telling. Some whisper that she ran away, some insist she knew her assailant, some speculate about strangers passing through. None of these narratives are verified, and yet they gain traction because the human mind craves explanation, even if it is false. The detective understands this. The truth is often quieter than rumor, but it is no less real. The family friend, ever present in the margins of the investigation, remains a figure of trust and normalcy. He attends gatherings, offers support, and never falters in his outward expressions of concern. In a town so small, familiarity offers protection. No one thinks to suspect the person who helps organize search parties, who consoles grieving relatives, who appears consistently unshaken in the face of tragedy. And yet the detective can't ignore the subtle pattern that emerges. Over the years, this man's statements remain unerringly consistent, rehearsed in a way that instinctively feels off. Memory is supposed to fade, to shift. His does not. At the police department, technology quietly shifts the possibilities. DNA databases expand. Forensic methods improve. What was once unreadable can now speak. Evidence long thought silent, fibers, hair, traces of blood, is subjected to new tests, revealing minuscule connections that would have been impossible to detect years ago. Each new analysis is slow, deliberate. Some results disappoint. Others raise more questions than answers. Yet every piece, every inconclusive result, pushes the investigation forward incrementally, creating a mosaic that is still incomplete but no longer static. Tips begin to trickle in again, faint and sporadic. An anonymous call. A recollection from a neighbor decades removed. A former coworker who suddenly remembers a detail that seemed irrelevant at the time. Each tip is evaluated meticulously, weighed against the decades of prior investigation, and usually discarded, but occasionally one demands attention. These moments of attention are tiny sparks in a long darkness, but in cold cases sparks matter. They illuminate possibilities that would otherwise remain invisible. The town, unaware of the technical advances and police deliberations, reacts to subtle changes in behavior. Police cars appear in the early morning hours. Detectives knock on doors not visited in years. Questions are asked differently, with a new intensity that hints at the unseen. The community senses the shift without fully understanding it. Suspicion grows like a quiet undercurrent, not directed openly at anyone, but present enough to make neighbors glance over shoulders and revisit memories long thought settled. The detective revisits the family friend, approaching him with caution, noting every word, every hesitation, every inflection. The conversation is controlled, neutral in tone, as if neither party wants to acknowledge the underlying tension. Answers are smooth, precise, rehearsed, but beneath the surface, the detective senses small cracks. Subtle cues that suggest knowledge withheld, not forgotten. Nothing overt. Nothing that could immediately be used in court. But enough to plant doubt in the mind of someone who has spent years studying the interplay of trust, opportunity, and familiarity in small-town disappearances. Inside the department, investigators pore over old statements again, cross-referencing with new forensic leads. They chart movement patterns, revisit timelines, overlay witness accounts. Slowly, patterns emerge that had been invisible before. Familiarity and access intersect in ways that raise uncomfortable possibilities. Every name is evaluated, every proximity measured, every behavior examined under the lens of what is statistically probable in cases of abduction and concealment. The family notices subtle changes too. Investigators are more present. Meetings are more frequent. Calls are longer and more detailed. There is an energy in the room that had not existed for years. A tension that is neither relief nor panic, but an awareness that the past may finally be revealing itself. They respond cautiously, knowing that long periods of inactivity have taught them the dangers of hope. Despite the careful control, fear begins to stir in the background of the community. The idea that the person responsible could have been close all along becomes more plausible with each new analysis, each revisited statement. People begin to remember small moments differently. A glance that seemed casual, a visit that felt unnecessary, a comment repeated too often. The undercurrent of suspicion is subtle but pervasive. Trust, once automatic, is now measured. By the middle of the year, technology produces results that would have been unimaginable 5 years earlier. Samples that had gone untouched for decades now yield DNA profiles. Small, previously meaningless fragments suddenly gain significance. Connections appear, almost imperceptible, between evidence and a person who has always existed on the periphery. Familiar, close, ostensibly innocent. The detective realizes the significance immediately. The cold case, long defined by silence and absence, is beginning to speak. The evidence, patient and unyielding, is offering a voice that cannot be ignored. Years of assumptions, trust, and small-town complacency are about to be challenged. As the year closes, the town remains unaware of how close the breakthrough has become. The family senses something shifting but cannot articulate it. Investigators, armed with data and intuition, prepare to act on months, years, even decades of meticulous work. The familiar streets of the town are about to witness the collapse of assumptions, the revelation that the most ordinary person may have been the one hiding the extraordinary horror all along. And still, life continues outwardly unchanged. Children go to school. Shopkeepers stock shelves. Church bells ring on Sundays. The quiet of the small town masks a tension that has been building steadily for years. A tension that will erupt once the silence is broken. Once the cold case finally refuses to stay cold. Once the familiar becomes undeniable. The 6th year begins like any other, with the sun rising over the dusty streets of the small Texas town. Yet nothing feels ordinary. There is a tension, almost imperceptible, that threads through the air. A nervous energy that unsettles even the most routine mornings. People move with measured caution, glancing at each other with faint suspicion. Trust, once unquestioned, has been replaced by calculation. The absence of answers has changed the town, shaping behavior and interactions in ways that no one fully recognizes. Inside the police department, the cold case file has taken on a new weight. Years of meticulous documentation sit beside evidence that has been re-examined using the latest forensic technology. DNA samples that were once inconclusive now produce partial profiles. Fibers and trace evidence that previously yielded nothing are suddenly meaningful. The detectives approach these new leads carefully, aware that decades of waiting have made every misstep potentially catastrophic. This is not a race. This is a precision operation, where patience is as essential as intuition. The family is drawn into this renewed attention reluctantly. They have grown used to the quiet, to the absence of answers, to living in a world where hope was more dangerous than despair. Now they are pulled back into the orbit of investigation. Meetings with detectives, reviews of old reports, re-examination of memories. Each encounter brings a mixture of cautious optimism and deep-seated anxiety. Years of waiting have conditioned them to brace for disappointment. Investigators focus intensely on the family friend, whose presence has been constant throughout the entire timeline. His proximity, once comforting to everyone around him, now begins to feel disquieting under scrutiny. His movements, his routines, his interactions with the missing woman prior to her disappearance, all are reevaluated with a critical eye. Nothing overtly incriminates him, yet subtle inconsistencies begin to appear when juxtaposed with newly uncovered forensic evidence. The human mind, after all, is imperfect, and even the most careful planning cannot erase every trace. The town continues its fragile equilibrium, unaware of how close the investigation is to breaking the case open. Life carries on with its routines. Children attend school, store owners open and close their shops, and neighbors gossip quietly in the shade of porches. But beneath the surface, something has shifted. The long-standing calm has been disturbed by an invisible tremor, a sense that hidden truths are edging toward exposure. People start to notice minor irregularities in what they once took for granted. A car that appears too often, a glance that lingers longer than it should, a voice that hesitates just enough to be remembered. Search patterns from the early days are revisited, mapped against new evidence. Detectives analyze timelines with an eye for subtle intersections, points where proximity, opportunity, and motive converge. They study witness statements in fine detail, cross-referencing dates, times, and movements. Memories long thought settled are re-examined, and inconsistencies are cataloged. Each small discovery is a thread that, when woven together, forms a picture previously invisible. The family watches this renewed scrutiny with a mixture of fear and hope. They have learned to regulate their expectations, to avoid celebrating prematurely. Each step forward is measured carefully, every word of encouragement weighed against the potential for disappointment. They have become experts in restraint, in living with uncertainty while remaining alert for signs that the past might finally speak. Rumors, once a source of frustration, begin to circulate in a different way. They are quieter, more tentative, less aggressive. People do not share wild theories so much as subtle observations, small details that might gain relevance under the lens of new investigation. The town has become cautious in its speculations, recognizing that the truth may be closer than anyone suspects, and that pointing fingers prematurely could have irreversible consequences. Inside the police department, the team consolidates their findings. Forensic results are reanalyzed, patterns are charted, timelines recalibrated. Each minor clue is tested against the larger framework of the investigation. The detectives know that they cannot rely solely on intuition. Decades of waiting have taught them that even the most persuasive instincts must be verified by evidence. The stakes are high. One misstep could allow decades of deception to continue unchecked. The family friend is questioned repeatedly, formally and informally. Each interaction is carefully documented. Investigators watch for micro-expressions, changes in speech patterns, subtle hesitations that could indicate knowledge withheld. His outward behavior remains calm, almost rehearsed, but small inconsistencies emerge when statements are compared across different interviews. Every detail is scrutinized. What was said, what was left unsaid, the timing of each response. Over time, the accumulation of these details begins to shift the focus from suspicion to actionable inquiry. The town itself begins to feel the effects of this renewed attention. People notice law enforcement vehicles parked in unusual places, unexpected visits from investigators, and conversations that seem to linger longer than necessary. Awareness grows that the cold case is no longer dormant, that the long silence is giving way to scrutiny. Fear mixes with anticipation. Residents re-examine their own memories and assumptions, wondering if someone they trusted could be implicated, or if the truth has always been closer than anyone imagined. Forensic breakthroughs continue to emerge. Small samples that previously yielded no leads now connect to individuals with statistical significance. DNA matches are verified and cross-checked. Fibers and residues, once dismissed as inconclusive, now point toward opportunity and contact. These incremental advancements build momentum, though the investigators proceed cautiously, understanding the sensitivity of decades-old evidence. They cannot afford error. The cost of a mistake is enormous, both legally and emotionally. The family senses a subtle change in the atmosphere of the investigation. Meetings with detectives are longer and more detailed. Reports are shared with greater transparency. There is an urgency in the questions, a deliberate attention to nuance that had been absent for years. Hope is cautiously reignited, though tempered by the long history of frustration and uncertainty. Community awareness also heightens. Local gossip shifts from speculation about what might have happened to noticing patterns of behavior, anomalies in routine, and moments that previously seemed mundane. The disappearance, long integrated into the town's collective memory, becomes active again in public consciousness. Everyone feels, if only subconsciously, that something significant is approaching. The tension is pervasive yet unspoken, like the electricity in the air before a storm. The family friend continues to function as a pillar of trust and support, attending events, offering assistance, maintaining a presence that has been normalized over the decades. Yet under the new scrutiny, familiar actions are reinterpreted. What was once comforting is now observed for meaning. Patterns of movement, timing, and opportunity are analyzed with precision. The calm exterior cannot fully obscure the patterns revealed by forensic and testimonial evidence. As the sixth year progresses, the investigation achieves a critical threshold. The combination of modern technology, renewed attention, and cumulative observation begins to point toward actionable leads. The cold case, long thought unyielding, shows signs of yielding. Investigators prepare to act, to follow threads that have been decades in the making. Every step is deliberate, calculated, informed by both data and intuition, aware that the smallest error could allow decades of secrecy to persist. The town continues to function outwardly as normal, but underneath, a palpable tension persists. People sense a change in energy, a shift in what was once assumed to be settled. The story that has hovered over the town for years is preparing to confront its long silence. Something that was hidden, overlooked, or assumed safe is about to be exposed. The quiet streets, the familiar faces, the daily rhythms, all are poised to collide with the revelation that the most ordinary appearances may conceal extraordinary truths. The family, the town, and the investigative team are on the edge of an awakening. They cannot yet know the full extent of what is about to be revealed, but they feel it in subtle ways. The intensified scrutiny, the careful questions, the re-examination of evidence. Years of absence and silence are yielding to the potential of discovery. The cold case, patient and persistent, is finally beginning to speak. And as the sixth year draws to a close, a sense of inevitability settles in. The past is preparing to reclaim its voice, the quiet accomplice of time giving way to the relentless clarity of evidence, and the town is about to confront the truth it has been avoiding for decades. The shadows are stirring. The familiar may no longer be safe, and the unanswered questions that have defined 6 long years are poised to demand resolution. The 7th year begins with a subtle but undeniable shift, a quiet tremor that ripples through the town, altering routines, conversations, and perceptions. The streets look the same. Dry pavement, familiar porches, children chasing balls under the watchful eye of parents who have long since taught them to be cautious. But the town feels different. The disappearance, once a muted echo, now pulses in the background, pressing on every interaction, every glance, every casual comment. People sense that the long silence surrounding the case is coming to an end, and that knowledge is almost more unsettling than the crime itself. Inside the police department, the cold case file has transformed. It is no longer just a collection of old reports, interviews, and evidence. It has become a living map of investigation, a tapestry of timelines, interactions, and opportunities, layered with decades of observation and re-examined facts. The detectives now have tools and technology that did not exist when the woman first vanished. DNA analysis is more precise, trace evidence more meaningful, and connections that once seemed impossible are now within reach. Each piece of evidence is reinterpreted, tested, and cataloged, producing patterns that were invisible in the early years. The family is drawn back into the orbit of investigation, with a mixture of hope and anxiety. They have lived long enough with unresolved grief to know that premature optimism can be dangerous. Yet the subtle signs of progress rekindle a cautious anticipation. Meetings with detectives become more frequent, longer, and more detailed. Questions are sharper, analysis more rigorous. The family listens, absorbs, and reacts, balancing their desire for answers with a hard-earned wariness. The family friend, once a figure of unquestioned familiarity, is now under renewed scrutiny. His proximity to the woman, his consistent presence in the community, and his helpful demeanor are all being reevaluated under the lens of new evidence. Investigators study his movements, statements, and interactions in minute detail. At first glance, nothing appears out of the ordinary, but over time, small inconsistencies begin to emerge. Tiny hesitations, repeated phrases, patterns of behavior that, when combined with forensic results, demand attention. The town, unaware of the intricacies of the investigation, begins to notice changes nonetheless. Police vehicles appear more frequently in unusual locations. Detectives revisit houses and businesses that have long felt settled in the routine of everyday life. Conversations at the grocery store become charged with an unspoken awareness. Residents begin to re-examine memories from the night of the disappearance, recalling details previously dismissed or forgotten. Suspicion, quiet and pervasive, settles like a mist over familiar streets. Forensic breakthroughs accelerate the investigation. DNA profiles extracted from decades-old evidence now produce matches that, while incomplete, create new leads. Fibers and traces previously dismissed as insignificant now suggest points of contact and movement that align with timelines under scrutiny. Investigators meticulously cross-reference these findings against statements, alibis, and known behaviors. The puzzle, once nearly impossible to assemble, begins to take form. The detective leading the renewed investigation notices a pattern emerging that had previously gone undetected: the convergence of opportunity, familiarity, and access. The family friend, by virtue of his trusted position, appears repeatedly at critical junctures, always present, never accused, always consistent. While consistency alone is not proof, the combination of evidence and subtle irregularities begins to paint a picture that cannot be ignored. The family senses the increasing intensity of the investigation, though they cannot yet understand its scope. They notice the investigators' attention to detail, the subtle shifts in questioning, and the emphasis on connections long assumed irrelevant. Their hope grows cautiously, tempered by years of disappointment, yet their hearts begin to anticipate what might be revealed. Community reactions remain subdued but perceptible. People sense that the case is no longer dormant. Conversations about her disappearance are more frequent, yet more cautious. Neighbors recall events differently, revisiting old memories for new significance. Small observations, who was where, when, and for how long, take on weight they never carried before. The town's collective awareness sharpens, its attention focused without fully knowing the reasons. Investigators continue to revisit the crime scene, now with forensic advancements that allow them to detect details invisible to the human eye. Tiny traces of material, overlooked or inaccessible for decades, reveal movement patterns, possible points of contact, and subtle disturbances in the environment that suggest presence and opportunity. Each discovery is cataloged meticulously, tested against known behaviors and timelines, and added to a growing matrix of understanding. The family friend is interviewed repeatedly, formally and informally, with questions designed to reveal inconsistencies, contradictions, or hesitations. His responses remain outwardly calm, precise, and rehearsed, but investigators notice micro-expressions, minute pauses, and small discrepancies between statements. These subtle cues, when cross-referenced with physical evidence, suggest that knowledge has been withheld, not forgotten. The detective understands that building a case is as much about observing what is unsaid as what is spoken. The town continues its outward routines, yet the tension is palpable. Children play under vigilant eyes. Conversations are cautious, charged with unspoken concern. Even routine activities carry a sense of heightened awareness. The community's collective memory, shaped by years of absence and unanswered questions, now braces for the inevitable revelation that long-held assumptions about safety, trust, and familiarity may be fundamentally flawed. The family is increasingly aware of the convergence of evidence and observation. Each meeting with detectives conveys a growing sense of purpose and direction. Analysts and investigators communicate progress carefully, emphasizing precision and verification, knowing that the emotional stakes are as high as the legal ones. The family's anticipation grows, tempered by experience, but alive with the possibility that decades of unanswered questions may finally yield clarity. Investigators prepare to act on accumulated evidence. The combination of modern forensic technology, meticulous cross-referencing of statements, and the analytical study of patterns in behavior produces a set of leads that demand attention. The cold case, long dormant and quietly devastating, now presents an opportunity for resolution. The detectives understand that timing, method, and careful planning are critical. Acting too soon or too late could compromise the investigation. As the 7th year closes, the case occupies a space between suspense and inevitability. The town is unaware of the full extent of the developments, yet the air is charged with subtle tension. Investigators, guided by evidence and intuition, move deliberately toward a breakthrough. The family's long patience is about to be tested. The familiar presence once assumed safe is poised to face scrutiny that has been decades in preparation. The cold case, patient and relentless, is no longer entirely silent. It has begun to speak in whispers of evidence, in patterns revealed by time, and in subtle inconsistencies that demand interpretation. The town, the family, and the investigators are all poised at the edge of revelation. And when the long-hidden truth emerges, it will not arrive gently. It will demand attention, confrontation, and acknowledgement, reshaping the understanding of trust, familiarity, and the depths of human deception. The 8th year begins with a quiet urgency that permeates the small Texas town, the kind of energy that can't be measured with sirens or headlines, but is felt in the way neighbors glance at each other, in the subtle shift of conversations, in the tightened hold of parents on children's hands. The disappearance that once seemed suspended in time has begun to exert a tangible pressure on the community, an invisible weight that everyone senses but no one can name. It is the knowledge that something long hidden is moving toward revelation, that the past, patient and deliberate, is preparing to speak. Inside the police department, the cold case file has taken on a new life. It is no longer merely a collection of reports, photographs, and statements. It has become a living map of investigation, meticulously annotated, cross-referenced, and layered with decades of observation. Every timeline is re-examined, every statement parsed with modern forensic understanding, every piece of physical evidence revisited under new technological methods. DNA samples, fibers, residues, materials once deemed inconsequential, are now scrutinized with precision that previous generations could not achieve. The family experiences a strange mixture of hope and apprehension. They have grown accustomed to a world defined by absence, a life lived alongside the void left by their loved one. Each subtle development in the investigation carries both promise and threat. They approach meetings with detectives cautiously, balancing a longing for answers against the hard-earned wisdom that hope in a cold case is fragile, dangerous even. They absorb each new piece of information silently, letting it settle before reacting, aware that patience has been their only ally for years. The family friend, ever present in the community, is now under intensified scrutiny. His actions, once interpreted as caring and normal, are reevaluated through the lens of modern analysis and subtle inconsistencies noted over time. Investigators study his movements, his interactions, his proximity to the victim in the days before her disappearance. Nothing overtly incriminating emerges at first glance. His demeanor is calm, almost rehearsed, his story consistent. Yet under the pressure of cross-reference timelines, forensic results, and witness statements, patterns begin to emerge that cannot be ignored. Consistency, once reassuring, now feels calculated, almost unnatural. The town, though outwardly unchanged, senses the underlying tension. Residents notice increased police presence, vehicles parked in unusual locations, investigators asking questions that seem pointed yet casual. Conversations at the grocery store, in churches, and along sidewalks carry a subtle edge, an unspoken acknowledgement that the case, long dormant, is moving again. People revisit their own memories, recalling small details they had long dismissed, questioning past assumptions. Suspicion, quiet and pervasive, threads through the community like a low hum that cannot be silenced. Forensic advancements continue to reshape the investigation. Evidence once considered silent now yields data. DNA profiles are matched to potential sources, fibers and trace elements are connected to specific locations. Residues provide information about movement and contact that was previously inaccessible. Investigators analyze these discoveries meticulously, checking and rechecking each link, aware that decades of delay have left no margin for error. The cold case, patient and deliberate, begins to yield answers in increments that feel almost imperceptible yet carry enormous significance. Detectives focus increasingly on the intersections of opportunity, familiarity, and motive. The family friend's presence at critical points, once considered innocuous, is re-examined. He was always there, always helpful, always visible. A pattern that now suggests more than mere coincidence. Investigators map out movements, timelines, and interactions with painstaking precision. Each small anomaly, each minor inconsistency, is logged and weighed against the growing matrix of evidence. The familiar, once trusted implicitly, is now the center of attention. The family becomes acutely aware of the shift. Meetings with investigators are more intense, questions more precise. The subtle cues of change are undeniable. Investigative focus has narrowed, emphasis on previously overlooked evidence has increased, and forensic breakthroughs demand careful interpretation. Hope, long dormant, begins to stir cautiously. The family prepares itself for the possibility that decades of silence may soon end, knowing that resolution, when it comes, will be as emotional as it is inevitable. The town responds in quiet, almost imperceptible ways. Residents notice patterns in law enforcement activity, reflect on past interactions, and reconsider events they had long accepted as routine. Memories are replayed, examined for inconsistencies, evaluated for relevance. Even casual observations, who arrived when, who left early, who seemed unusually attentive, gain significance under the weight of the ongoing investigation. The disappearance, long integrated into the town's identity, now reasserts itself with the subtle force of inevitability. The family friend is interviewed repeatedly. Each session is carefully structured to reveal potential inconsistencies. Detectives observe not just what is said but what is omitted, the rhythm of speech, the pauses, the micro-expressions that betray hidden knowledge. Outward calm is noted, yet the subtext of these encounters suggests awareness, calculation, restraint. Each observation, when cross-referenced with forensic data and timelines, becomes a point of interest in a broader pattern. Investigators begin to overlay forensic findings with witness statements and behavioral analysis. Small traces of material, previously insignificant, now align with timelines and opportunities in ways that suggest deliberate concealment. Each correlation is tested, retested, and verified. The process is slow, meticulous, deliberate, a combination of science, psychology, and experience honed over decades. The cold case, once defined by silence and absence, now asserts its presence in evidence, patterns, and analysis. The family, the investigators, and even the town's residents are on the cusp of confrontation with a long-hidden truth. The familiar, the trusted, the person whose proximity seemed comforting, now stands under scrutiny that has been decades in preparation. The investigation, once dormant, now moves with deliberate urgency. Every lead, every pattern, every subtle detail is considered with the precision necessary to overcome decades of obfuscation. As the 8th year draws to a close, the tension is palpable. The town continues its outward routines, but beneath the surface, nerves are taut. The family senses the imminence of revelation. The police understand that the cumulative weight of evidence, technology, and observation is approaching a critical threshold. The cold case, patient and relentless, is preparing to yield its long-hidden answers. The streets, quiet and familiar, are charged with the anticipation of exposure. The town itself seems to hold its breath, unaware that the familiar friend, once beyond suspicion, is now the focus of a meticulous and relentless scrutiny. The convergence of forensic breakthroughs, behavioral observation, and investigative persistence has created a moment where decades of absence and uncertainty may finally come to resolution. And as the year closes, the unspoken truth hangs over the community like a shadow at dusk, stretching long and ominous across the familiar landscape. The silence that has defined 7 years is cracking. The cold case is speaking now, quietly, persistently, unmistakably, and when the revelation arrives, it will reshape every assumption, every relationship, and every memory of what it means to know someone, to trust, and to live with the consequences of decades-long secrecy. The 9th year begins with an almost imperceptible shift in energy, a quiet pressure that creeps into the rhythm of the town, tightening around every interaction and observation. Nothing appears different on the surface. the same cracked sidewalks, the same porches, the same streets where children play and neighbors chat. But underneath, a subtle unease threads through every glance, every pause, every casual exchange. The disappearance, long treated as a quiet tragedy, has returned with intensity, asserting itself in ways that demand attention without announcing it aloud. Inside the police department, the investigation has reached a new stage of intensity. The cold case file, once static and inert, is now a dynamic instrument of inquiry. Investigators overlay newly interpreted evidence with decades-old records. Timelines are reanalyzed with exacting precision, and forensic breakthroughs illuminate connections that had previously been invisible. DNA matches, fiber analyses, and trace evidence, once inconclusive, now provide threads that can be woven into a coherent framework. Every piece, no matter how small, is scrutinized for meaning. The family, though accustomed to living alongside uncertainty, senses a significant change. Meetings with investigators grow longer, more detailed, and more urgent. The subtleties of tone, choice of words, and emphasis convey that something is shifting. Something long awaited may finally emerge from the shadows. Hope is cautious, restrained by the weight of previous disappointments, but it cannot be suppressed entirely. Their grief, honed over years of silence, now exists alongside a tentative anticipation. The family friend, whose presence has remained constant over the decades, is increasingly viewed through the lens of critical scrutiny. Investigators dissect every interaction, every statement, every movement in relation to the timeline of the disappearance. What was once comforting, his proximity, his reliability, his consistency, now appears in a different light. Small anomalies, micro-expressions, slight inconsistencies across years of statements, and his presence at critical moments coalesce into a picture that investigators cannot ignore. Trust, once automatic, is now subject to analysis. The town reacts subtly. Police vehicles appear at unusual hours, investigators revisit locations that had long felt routine, and questions are asked in ways that provoke reflection without revealing the depth of inquiry. Residents replay past memories. Who was where, who said what, and who was unusually present or absent on that fateful night. Suspicion, quiet but persistent, begins to settle into the collective consciousness. People start to notice patterns, small deviations from the ordinary, and inconsistencies in previously accepted narratives. Forensic breakthroughs continue to accumulate. Materials that had been preserved for decades now provide usable data. DNA extracted from decades-old samples yields partial profiles, fibers are linked to specific sources, and traces of material point to sequences of movement and opportunity that had previously been dismissed. Each piece of evidence is meticulously tested, verified, and cross-referenced against existing records, creating an increasingly coherent picture. The detective leading the investigation understands the fragility of these connections and treats each with the precision required to avoid error. Patterns begin to emerge that suggest deliberate concealment. The family friend's routine movements, once interpreted as ordinary, now align with critical windows of opportunity. His proximity to the victim, his interactions with others, and his presence at significant moments intersect with the evidence in ways that create a compelling framework. The subtle irregularities, once dismissed as coincidences, accumulate into a pattern that demands attention. Investigators are cautious, but increasingly confident that the path forward is defined. The family senses the mounting pressure of revelation. Meetings with detectives are laden with detail. Forensic evidence is presented with careful explanation. Timelines are discussed in granular terms, and witness statements are revisited with an eye toward contradictions or corroboration. The family processes each revelation cautiously, aware that the truth, when it comes, will carry both relief and devastation. The anticipation is palpable, even as they continue to brace for potential disappointment. The town remains outwardly unchanged, yet tension weaves through daily life. Conversations carry an unspoken gravity, observations are replayed in the mind for subtle significance, and familiar faces are viewed anew with an undercurrent of questioning. Memory becomes active, not passive, as residents unconsciously test their recollections against new scrutiny. The absence, the long-standing void of answers, now presses against the town in ways it has not for years. The family friend continues to participate in the community, attending events and maintaining routines that appear normal. Investigators, however, analyze these actions as part of a larger pattern. Every gesture, every interaction, every decision is mapped against the timeline of the disappearance. Micro-expressions are cataloged, pauses are measured, inconsistencies are noted. Outward calm is insufficient to mask subtle signs of awareness or calculation. Each session, each observation adds another thread to the growing fabric of suspicion. Investigators revisit the crime scene, walking familiar streets with fresh eyes and advanced tools. Patterns of disturbance, material traces, and access points are examined with a level of scrutiny impossible during the initial investigation. Small details that were once overlooked now take on significance, revealing connections between the victim, the environment, and the person under investigation. The town itself becomes a living map of opportunity, behavior, and concealment, analyzed with methodical care. The convergence of forensic evidence, behavioral observation, and accumulated records creates an actionable framework. Investigators begin to prepare for steps that may finally break the case open. The family, unaware of the precise details, senses a momentum building, a shift that carries both hope and tension. The years of waiting, the decades of silence are approaching a climax. The cold case, patient and persistent, is no longer dormant. The tension in the town is subtle but pervasive. Daily routines continue, but awareness is heightened. Observations that were once inconsequential are reconsidered. Neighbors replay conversations in their minds, reassess interactions, and question previously accepted assumptions. The social fabric, woven from decades of trust and routine, is stretched taut by the invisible presence of an impending revelation. The family friend's actions are subjected to rigorous cross-examination. Investigators compare statements across years, analyze behavior in the context of evidence, and map movements against timelines. The consistency that once reassured becomes a point of suspicion. Calculated presence, precise timing, and repetition are not ignored. They are considered potentially deliberate. The familiar, once a source of comfort, is now the axis of scrutiny. The year progresses with careful incremental advances. Evidence is gathered, analyzed, and verified. Patterns of behavior, opportunity, and proximity converge with forensic findings. Investigators, armed with decades of data, modern technology, and meticulous observation, prepare to act. The familiar structures of the town, the streets, the homes, the community centers, are silent witnesses to the unfolding of long-delayed justice. By the close of the 9th year, anticipation hangs over the town like a heavy cloud. The family, the investigators, and the community are all poised at the edge of revelation. The cold case, once defined by silence and absence, has begun to assert its presence through evidence, patterns, and relentless investigation. The familiar face, trusted for decades, stands at the center of scrutiny. The convergence of technology, observation, and human intuition has created a moment where decades of secrecy may finally end, and the truth, long delayed, prepares to emerge. The streets, the houses, the familiar routines all continue outwardly unchanged. Yet the invisible tension is palpable. The community senses that what has been hidden for nearly a decade may finally be exposed. The patterns of behavior, the forensic evidence, and the painstakingly gathered records converge, signaling that the long-awaited confrontation with reality is imminent. The cold case is no longer silent, and when it speaks, it will leave nothing untouched, reshaping trust, relationships, and memory in its wake. The 10th year dawns with a quiet intensity that permeates the small Texas town, a pressure almost imperceptible yet undeniable. The streets remain familiar, the cracked sidewalks, the worn porches, the dry dust curling along the edges of the roads, but beneath this surface, the air is taut with anticipation. Conversations are measured, glances linger, and the rhythm of daily life carries an unspoken tension. The disappearance, long suspended in time, has resurfaced with a persistent gravity, asserting itself not through noise or headline, but through the weight of expectation that now presses on every interaction, every memory. Inside the police department, the cold case file has evolved into a living document, an intricate map of decades of investigation, now layered with new forensic data and reanalyzed evidence. Timelines, once static, are now dynamic, overlaid with DNA matches, trace evidence, and behavioral analyses that were unavailable in the initial years. Every fiber, hair, and residue is scrutinized under advanced testing, revealing subtle connections and potential intersections that were previously invisible. Investigators navigate this complexity with painstaking care, aware that the margin for error after so many years is non-existent. Each decision, each interpretation carries enormous weight. The family, having lived with absence and uncertainty for nearly a decade, experiences a mixture of cautious hope and underlying apprehension. Meetings with detectives are longer, more detailed, and more methodical. Each piece of forensic evidence, each re-examined witness statement, each timeline cross-check is presented and discussed meticulously. The family absorbs these updates silently, processing the implications with the restrained intensity born of years of waiting. Hope exists alongside fear, knowing that revelation could bring both closure and devastation. The family friend, whose proximity to the victim has long been normalized and trusted, is now a focal point under intense scrutiny. Investigators dissect his behavior, statements, and movements across decades. What once seemed reassuring, consistency, calm presence, helpfulness, is now reinterpreted through the lens of accumulated evidence. Subtle inconsistencies, patterns of interaction, and strategic presence at key moments are all examined meticulously. Trust, once automatic and unquestioned, is now assessed with the precision of decades of investigative experience. The town itself, outwardly unchanged, feels a subtle yet pervasive shift. People notice the increased activity of law enforcement, the presence of investigators at unusual hours, and the intensity of their questioning. Memories long dormant resurface. A glance in passing, a visit at an odd hour, a comment repeated too often. Suspicion, quiet yet persistent, threads through the community, altering interactions and perceptions. The disappearance, long absorbed into the collective consciousness as a tragic story, now reasserts itself as a living mystery demanding attention. Forensic breakthroughs continue to reshape the investigation. DNA evidence, once inconclusive, now matches potential sources with significant probability. Fibers, residues, and trace materials align with previously overlooked timelines and opportunities. Investigators painstakingly cross-reference these findings with behavioral analysis and historical statements, constructing a framework of suspicion and opportunity that was previously impossible. Each incremental discovery is layered upon decades of prior work, forming a coherent, actionable narrative. Patterns emerge that suggest deliberate concealment. The family friend's presence, once benign, now aligns with critical windows of opportunity. His interactions with the victim, his timing, and his consistency converge with forensic evidence in ways that demand attention. Small anomalies, previously dismissed as coincidence, accumulate into a pattern of concerning significance. The investigative team, aware of the delicate balance between intuition and evidence, proceeds with calculated precision. The family senses the mounting pressure of potential revelation. Every meeting, every update, every detail shared carries weight. The subtle cues of investigators, the emphasis, the careful phrasing, the unspoken expectations, signal that progress is real and imminent. Hope, long dormant, stirs cautiously. The family prepares emotionally for the possibility that decades of silence may finally yield clarity. Community awareness, though unspoken, begins to shift. Conversations carry a measured edge, observations are replayed mentally for subtle significance, and interactions are colored by the knowledge that the case, long dormant, has been reignited. Residents reconsider past events with heightened attention, questioning details that once seemed trivial. The social fabric, once defined by trust and routine, is stretched thin by the anticipation of exposure and the unsettling idea that the familiar may not be safe. The family friend continues to maintain his public persona of calm normalcy. He attends gatherings, offers support, and moves seamlessly through the community. Yet under scrutiny, his behavior is cataloged, analyzed, and compared against evidence and timelines. Investigators note micro-expressions, pauses, and slight inconsistencies. Each observation adds to a growing body of circumstantial evidence that frames the patterns of access, opportunity, and potential intent. The familiar becomes the focus of meticulous attention, the cornerstone of the unfolding investigation. Investigators revisit the crime scene repeatedly, combining forensic science with behavioral analysis. Tiny traces of evidence, material residues, subtle disturbances, and overlooked environmental clues are reevaluated to reconstruct potential movements and interactions. The environment, once considered static, now functions as a map of opportunity and behavior, offering insights into what transpired decades ago. Each step, each discovery, reinforces the emerging narrative. As the 10th year progresses, the convergence of evidence, observation, and technology reaches a critical threshold. Investigators prepare for actionable steps. The matrix of behavioral patterns, forensic data, and historical documentation forms a cohesive framework. Every decision is deliberate, every observation verified. The cold case, long patient and silent, is on the cusp of revelation. The town continues outwardly unchanged, but the undercurrent of tension is palpable. Children play under vigilant eyes, conversations carry subtle caution, and familiar routines are viewed with a heightened awareness. The community is unknowingly poised for confrontation with a truth that will challenge assumptions and redefine perceptions. Patterns of trust, normalcy, and familiarity are being questioned, creating a collective tension that no one fully articulates but all sense. The family observes the increasing intensity with a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. Meetings with detectives convey both hope and caution. The meticulous presentation of evidence, cross-reference statements, and forensic analysis suggests that the investigation has reached a decisive stage. The emotional weight of long-delayed resolution becomes tangible, each revelation carrying the potential to reshape understanding, trust, and memory. The investigative team continues to map every detail against the accumulated evidence. Behavioral patterns, access to the victim, and timing intersect with forensic breakthroughs, creating an actionable roadmap. The family friend, once trusted implicitly, occupies a central position in this analysis. Outward appearances, routine behavior, and consistent presence are no longer sufficient to mask the alignment of evidence and opportunity. By the close of the 10th year, anticipation and tension dominate. The family, the investigators, and the town are on the brink of a confrontation with a long-hidden reality. The cold case, patient and relentless, asserts its presence through evidence, pattern, and scrutiny. The familiar face, once beyond suspicion, now stands at the center of a complex, methodical investigation. The convergence of decades of observation, modern forensic technology, and behavioral analysis creates a moment where secrecy may finally be shattered. The streets, the homes, and the daily rhythms of the town remain outwardly normal, yet beneath the surface, everything is poised on the edge of revelation. The invisible tension threads through every interaction, every glance, and every memory. The cold case is no longer dormant. Its voice grows louder through evidence, observation, and relentless pursuit. And when the truth emerges, long delayed yet inevitable, it will reshape trust, perception, and the very fabric of the community that has waited for it for 10 years.